This is the scary story about the airport bag.
There was a man named Tim who worked for TSA. One day he was checking bags when he noticed a man who just looked sketchy. He had on dirty clothes, no bag, and only one suitcase. As the man put his bag on the slider to get checked, Tim could tell he was nervous and that something was up. Tim then took the bag off the slider and said, "Sir, I'm going to look through your bag. Am I going to find anything illegal or harmful in it?" The man then looked at Tim and said no. When Tim opened the suitcase, a disgusting smell was coming out of it. He then opened it fully and saw something truly disturbing. Inside the man's suitcase was a mutilated cut-up body that appeared to be a young boy's. The man tried to run, but security caught him, and it turns out that the man's son did not want to go on a trip with him, so he killed him, cut him up, and put his body in a suitcase and brought him.
This is the scary story about the funeral.
There was a man named Mark who had to go to a funeral.
It was at 4 p.m. and it was 3 p.m. So he was in a hurry.
He got ready, got something to eat,
And then went to the funeral home.
When Mark got to the funeral home,
He noticed that the parking lot was pretty full, and he thought he wasn't going to get a spot.
but luckily he got the last available parking spot. When Mark walked into the funeral home,
He noticed nobody acknowledged him. Not one person even looked at him. This made Mark feel a little weird, and something just felt off.
when it was Mark's turn to go up and look at the body in the casket,
He instantly froze in shock.
it was his body in the casket and he was attending his funeral.
This is the creepy story about the puzzle.
There was a young lady who lived on her own in a remote area.
She had no family or friends, and was never married. Her only joy in life,
Was doing jigsaw puzzles.
every night she would work on a new puzzle until it was complete.
One dark rainy night,
She was moving furniture in her bedroom when she found a dusty old box behind her wardrobe. When she wiped the dust away, she realized it was a jigsaw puzzle. The cover of the box was faded, and she couldn't make out what it was. But her curiosity got the better of her,
and she decided to put the puzzle together.
but as she put the puzzle together, she realized to her astonishment, the image that was formed was the very room she was sitting in, and the person in the center of the puzzle, as she finished it, was her. As she started to shake,
She put the last 4 pieces in the puzzle.
in the picture, she saw herself sitting in her kitchen, and in the window behind her,
She saw a man grinning and holding an axe.
she was so terrified she couldn't turn around. But the last thing the girl ever heard,
Was the sound of breaking glass.
this is the scary story about the locker.
There was a kid named Kyle, and at his school people believed that there was a cursed locker.
Every time somebody had the locker, they either died or got seriously injured. But Kyle didn't believe this rumor, and he wanted to prove the whole school wrong.
He then got his locker changed to the cursed one.
Everybody was calling him crazy, but he knew there was nothing wrong with it.
The first week everything was fine.
And everybody began to believe that Kyle was right. That day after school,
Kyle was driving home and saw an old lady crossing the street.
he then decided to get out of his car and help her. But when he opened his car door,
He did not see that a car was coming.
the car then hit Kyle at full speed, leaving him paralyzed from the neck down.
Kyle and everybody at school
Was positive it was because of the locker. The school then restricted anybody from ever having the locker again.
and made it off limits to even go near it.
This is the scary story about the wish.
There was a teenage girl named Tina who was sitting on a bench at the park
Anne was very mad. A random man then walked by.
and noticed that she was upset, so he sat down next to her.
He then asked Tina what's wrong.
Tina looked at him and said, "It's my stupid mom. I wish she was dead."
The man then looked her in the eyes and said, "You shouldn't wish for that."
Tina then got mad at the man for defending her mom, and she then got up and walked away. That night when Tina was about to go to bed,
She heard her mom talking to somebody downstairs. Nobody else lived with them, so she was pretty confused.
then she heard her mom let out a blood-curdling scream. Tina then ran downstairs and went straight to the kitchen.
What she saw made her freeze.
Her mom was dead on the floor in a pool of blood.
Then a man came out of the other room, and Tina noticed that it was the man from the park.
He then looked at her with a creepy smile on his face and said, "I told you that you shouldn't have wished for that."
The scary reality of what would happen if humans disappeared, part 2.
1 year after humans disappear, all satellites in Earth's orbit
Will fall down back to Earth over the course of a few years, changing the way the night sky will look completely.
The falling satellites will appear as shooting stars. In 2 decades, all vegetation will go back to its original form.
And in 25 years,
Cities will be completely overgrown by plants. In 200 years, all cities built on bodies of water.
will be underwater, and coastal cities will be swept into the ocean,
Water pressure will break dams, causing them to collapse.
changing the landscapes of Earth. In 300 years, all metal structures like the Statue of Liberty will corrode and fall over. The only structures on Earth that will be left standing are the ones made of stone, like the Great Wall of China and the Pyramids of Giza, which will last for millenniums. These are the scariest things that astronauts have ever said.
Up first, during the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, after Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, NASA claims to have lost transmission for roughly 2 minutes. And in a secret message that Neil Armstrong sent to NASA, this is what he said. "These babies are huge, sir. Enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecrafts out here, lined up on the far side of the crater's edge. They're on the moon watching us." Next up, many astronauts have said, when they have gone to space, they've seen dead animal corpses floating around. This makes sense because the first test subjects to go to space were a monkey and a dog. While this is extremely sad, it's still very creepy. Just imagine seeing animal corpses floating around against the backdrop of a black and infinite space, and you just have to go on and do what you came to do.
This video will make you believe in ghosts.
Okay, so we all are definitely scared of ghosts, and hope we never encounter one. But the video I'm going to show you shows a little girl playing with her imaginary friend, but once her dad enters the room, it disappears.
Amy.
These are the creepiest things kids have ever said to their parents, Part 3.
There was a woman who had a 3-year-old daughter, and one day she told her that she wasn't her first mommy. The mom didn't think anything of it because she thought she could have been referring to her grandma or some person at daycare. But a few weeks later, they were driving on the highway when her daughter pointed off to the left and said, "This is where I died before." The mother got chills down her spine and the rest of the car ride was silent. Next up, a woman's daughter was sick with the flu when she was about 5 years old, and she went up to check on her while she was sleeping. Her daughter then woke up and she said, "Honey, do you need anything?" Her daughter then replied, "No, Mom, your mommy Trudy is watching and taking care of me right now." The woman's mom passed away 6 years before she was born, and that was her name.
These are the worst times to be alive in history, Part 1.
Up first is 536 AD. In 536 AD, much of the world went dark for a full 18 months. A mysterious fog rolled over Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The fog blocked the sun during the day, causing temperatures to drop, crops to fail, and people to die. This resulted in a famine, but that's not even the worst thing that happened this year. The Justinian bubonic plague completely spread throughout the Mediterranean, leading to an estimated death toll of 25 to 50 million people, which was 35 to 55% of the population. Just imagine living in complete darkness for 2 years, and then getting hit with one of the deadliest pandemics ever. 536 AD is definitely one of the worst years.
These are facts that feel illegal to know, Part 1.
Up first, 1 in every 2 people will get cancer. This is actually terrifying, and this means that 1 of everyone's parents is likely to get cancer. This is just awful. Next up, dogs can actually smell fear. So if you have ever been around a dog that just keeps barking at you and being mean, it's most likely because they can smell the fear on you. So next time you're around a mean dog, just remember this. Next up, 1 in 25 death penalty victims are innocent. At least 1 out of every 25 are innocent, and they're killed for crimes they didn't even commit. Imagine being on death row for a crime you didn't commit, and then getting killed for it. That has to be the worst way to go mentally.
These are facts that'll make you uncomfortable, Part 1.
Up first, for all of you peanut butter lovers out there, a typical jar of peanut butter contains 10 or more rodent hairs, averaging 1 or more rodent hairs per 100 grams. So next time you're eating peanut butter, just remember you're eating rodent hairs also. Next up, Phil Lewis, aka Mr. Mosby from Disney Channel, was arrested for manslaughter and driving while intoxicated in 1991. This is absolutely crazy, because who knew that Mr. Mosby killed somebody? Finally, Big Bird almost joined NASA's Challenger mission to encourage kids to get interested in space. Had the plan been followed through, millions of kids would have watched Big Bird and the spacecraft explode on live TV.
This is the scary story about The Voice.
One night, a young girl was lying in bed, just on the verge of falling asleep, when she suddenly heard her mother calling her name from the kitchen. She then got up and began walking down the stairs to see what her mother wanted. But as she got halfway down the stairs, she heard her mother's voice from the top of the staircase say, "Don't go down there." I heard the voice too.
These are songs with scary meanings, part 2.
Up first is Gangnam Style. If you owned anything back in 2012 that played music, you definitely heard this song. This is the origin of the rise of the K-pop style in the United States. Gangnam Style is a fun song with a dance that swept the world. But the song isn't as happy as it seems. Gangneam is a rich area in South Korea, filled with the mega rich of the country. This song is about people clamoring all over each other just to get to Gangneam. And it also addresses the insanely high debt rate of the country's citizens. P.S. why the singer of this song can now live there, now that he made all of his millions from this song.
This man was shot dead by his own dog.
This 32-year-old man was on a hunting trip with his dog, and while he was packing up all the equipment in his car, his dog stepped on the trigger of a shotgun, which shot and killed the man. It was obviously a complete accident and a very unlucky death. This is the first time in history a dog ever shot and killed a human being.
These are the scariest curses to use on people in real life, part 3.
Okay, to perform this curse, you have to go outside at midnight with a glass cup and make sure nobody is around you. Then say the person's name that you want to curse 10 times over and over again. Next, take the glass cup and throw it on the ground. When it shatters, count how many pieces it's in. And the number that you get is the amount of days it'll take for the person you curse to die. Now pick up every single piece of the glass, but be very careful, because if you cut yourself with the glass, the curse will then be put on you.
This is the creepy story about the crack in the door.
There was a young girl named Jess who was in bed one night.
She was just about to fall asleep when she heard a very loud bang coming from downstairs. Then she heard footsteps coming up the stairs.
Jess was extremely scared and did not know what to do.
So she opened her closet door
And went inside. She was hoping whatever was in her house
wouldn't find her in the closet. Just then, Jess heard her bedroom door open
and footsteps enter the room.
Then suddenly through the crack in the closet door
Appeared her mom's face and she said, "Jess, honey, it's okay to come out now. You're safe."
Jess was frozen in fear and did not know what to do. She knew that wasn't her mom
because her mom has been dead for months.
This is the scariest story about the bad dream.
One night, a little girl went into her parents' bedroom while they were asleep. She then shook her dad and said, "Daddy, I had a bad dream." Her father blinked his eyes and then sat up in bed. The digital alarm clock glowed red in the darkness, and it was 3:33 a.m. Her father then asked her if she wanted to get in bed and talk about it. She then said, "No, Daddy." The oddness of the situation made her father wake up fully. He could barely make out his daughter's pale form, outlined in the light from the doorway. "Why not, sweetie?" he asked. The little girl then began to cry, because in my dream, when I told you about my dream, the thing wearing mommy's skin sat up, she said. For a moment, he felt paralyzed, unable to take his eyes off his daughter. Then he felt the covers behind him slowly beginning to shift.
This is the scariest story about the game.
There was a father and son playing a game of basketball one day at the park.
They were having a lot of fun enjoying the day.
As they kept playing though, the father kept getting mad at his son
because his son was beating him.
His son kept talking trash and laughing. This really got the father mad.
He then picked up the basketball and threw it at his son's head.
His son then fell to the ground and cracked his head open on the concrete.
The father stood there in shock as his son bled to death and died.
He could not believe what he just done.
Somebody saw everything that happened and called the police.
When the police got there, they arrested the father and took him to jail.
The father was so heartbroken and disgusted at himself for what he did to his son,
he actually took his own life in jail that night.
This is the scary story about the cookout.
One day, a family was having a cookout when suddenly a young girl named Emily, who was 7 years old, went missing. Everybody began to panic and look for her. They all started looking around the house and the neighborhood and even the surrounding areas for her. But Emily was not found. And after weeks of looking for Emily and not finding anything, her parents began to lose hope. But one day, Emily's parents got a letter in the mail, and written on the front was Emily's name, exactly in her handwriting. Emily's parents thought it was her writing to them, and they immediately ripped it open. But when they opened it, they froze in horror and screamed. Inside the envelope was a picture of Emily's mangled dead body with her pinky finger.
This is a scary story about the wrong house. There were two friends named Ryan and Jack, and one night they went ding-dong ditching. They ding-dong ditched a couple houses, but nothing happened until they went to this one house. Jack told Ryan to go up and ring the doorbell, and he agreed. Ryan then sprinted up to the door and started banging on it and ringing the doorbell. Suddenly, a very big man opened the door and grabbed Ryan. Jack watched in horror as this man dragged Ryan into his house. Jack didn't know what to do, so he ran home and told his parents what happened. They then called the cops. Two police officers then went to the house and began knocking on the door. But when nobody answered, they knocked the door down, and what they saw inside was horrible. Ryan's body was nailed to the ground, and the man was on top of him, beating him to death. The police then shot the man, but it was too late to save Ryan. Jack was completely devastated and promised himself he would never go ding-dong ditching again. Most Scary Urban Legends, Part 6. This is Krasu. She's a Thailand legend. She's a female spirit who wanders the fields at night. At first you would just see her face, until you look down and she has no body, and just her internal organs. Her guts are usually covered with fresh red blood. Her face appears to look somewhat like a vampire's. She has very sharp teeth, and sometimes has a blue halo around her head. She is always hungry for meat, whether that be animal meat or human meat. Before she goes hunting, she hides her headless body somewhere safe, and she needs to come back to it before sunrise. And then she becomes a normal person again for the day with no differences from anybody else. One of her origins was that she was a princess who was forced to marry a high-ranked Seminese member who killed her people in battle. But she loved somebody else and was caught with them by the Seminese member. She was then sentenced to be burned alive. She then asked the witch for help, who summoned a spell on her immune to fire, but the spell worked too late and everything was burned besides her internal organs and head. These are Scary Urban Legends in each state, Part 1. Up first are the Dark Watchers. The Dark Watchers are located in California and are extremely terrifying. Whenever people saw them, they were described as very tall, with featureless dark silhouettes, and often wore hats, and had walking sticks. Nobody has ever seen the Dark Watchers up close, because everybody that has disappeared. Some people believe the Dark Watchers are a very powerful entity from some other dimension, and they came here to psychologically torture humans. So if you live in California and see a dark, tall silhouette of a person in the distance, whatever you do, don't walk up to it because you will disappear. This is the creepy story about the man in the park. One day a kid named Mark was walking around in a park. When a random man came up to him and started to say he can tell the future for a person, he told Mark that his family will soon be dead because of a mistake he would make. Mark told the man to go away and he didn't believe him one bit. 2 weeks went by and nothing happened. Mark was now positive that the man was making this up. That night, his parents wanted to go to the movies. Jeff didn't want to go, so his parents asked if he could drive them and pick them up, but he said no. His favorite baseball team was playing and he wanted to watch them. His parents then ended up driving. Hours went by and his parents were still not home. Mark tried to call them, but they did not answer. He then heard his doorbell ring. When he opened it, standing there was police officers. They said his parents had died. Their car brakes went out going down a hill, and they crashed right into a building. Mark was devastated. He wished he drove them instead of watching his stupid game. Mark then looked out into the road, and standing there was the man from the park waving and grinning. Most Scary Urban Legends, Part 5. This is Yuki Onna. She is a Japanese legend who is very tall with very long hair, and her eyes can terrify anybody who looks into them. She is also called a snow woman. When she moves, she floats above the ground. If she ever feels threatened, she disappears into a cloud of smoke or snow. Her origin is that she was a pregnant woman who froze to death. That's why sometimes she shows herself holding a baby. She has a terrible evil nature. When she sees travelers, she uses her frozen breath to turn them into ice statues. Or she turns into a female demon and breaks into people's houses and kills them while they sleep. She also kidnaps kids and takes souls, and throws men who ignore her off cliffs. Finally, she tells people to hold her baby for her, but the baby is so heavy, they're just stuck in place and they freeze to death. These are scary apps that you should never download, Part 1. Up first is GeoCreepy. This app allows you to basically track anybody you want. GeoCreepy can locate Twitter users based off their tweets. And all you have to do is type in their Twitter username, and GeoCreepy will find them. Next up is RIP-VIP. This app sends you notifications and alerts every time a famous person dies. This is actually super weird, but if you're interested when famous people die,
Well, this app might be for you. Finally is a Situationist app. This app connects you with random strangers in your area. It will then give you a weird task to do with that stranger. It could be like hugging the stranger for 5 seconds, or giving the stranger money. Either way, it's pretty creepy because you're just meeting some random person, and for all you know, they could be a serial killer. This is what would happen if a mega tsunami hit the United States East Coast. So the East Coast of the United States makes up 38% of the American population, and the entire US East Coast will be affected, putting 14 states and 124 million people at risk. Majority of people will be instantly washed away by the giant wave, but if you're lucky enough to escape, your best bet is to climb somewhere high, whether it be a staircase of a building or just a tall hill somewhere. And what's even scarier is that your own safety will be entirely your responsibility, since emergency services wouldn't be able to. Majority of the East Coast cities, like New York, Miami, Philadelphia, will be virtually destroyed and flooded. Millions of people would be dead, and the people that did survive would have to wait for helicopters to come pick them up at these high locations they're safe at. These are the creepiest commercials ever created, part 1. Okay, so the commercial that I'm about to show you is extremely scary, and some of you might have seen it already, but if you haven't, you're definitely in for a scare. These are the most disturbing things found in food, part 1. Okay, so everybody watching this video definitely had a Capri Sun. But after watching this video, you would definitely never have another one again. In 2016, a young boy told his dad that the juice wasn't coming out of the Capri Sun packet. So his dad then cut it open, and what they found inside will make you sick to your stomach.
The 4-year-old was trying to drink it, and this is what it's inside. Nasty.
Well, what is it?
Looks like...
So next time you go and drink a Capri Sun, you might be drinking fungus instead of Capri Sun. These are facts that'll make you get off social media, part 1. This man's name is Michael Woods Manzi, and in 1975 he killed a 5-year-old boy by stabbing him through the heart. He had a journal where he took notes about the child and how he was dying. He then cannibalized the 5-year-old. But what's even crazier is that he was released from prison after 12 years on good behavior in 2011. Next up, this woman's name is Lamora Williams, and she murdered her 2 sons by throwing them both in her oven and cooking them alive. And if that's not bad enough, she sent a video to the 2 boys' father. This is actually insane, and I can't believe people like this exist. These are the creepiest unexplained videos ever, part 1. Up first is a ghost attack caught on camera. In this video, you can see a shadowy figure pushing a man to the ground and then dragging him down the hallway. Many people believe this video to be fake, but a majority of other people believe it to be real. I don't know about you, but something about this video just feels real. These are scary facts about popular childhood movies, part 2. Up first, in Lilo and Stitch the movie, there was a scene where Stitch hijacks a Boeing 747 jet and crashes it through a building to save Lilo. But after 9/11, Disney went back and changed the sequence completely, fearing it would be too close to the real-life attacks. The scene was then replaced with a spaceship being hijacked and crashing into the mountains instead. You can actually watch the original deleted scene on YouTube. Next up, Robert Knox, who played Marcus Belby in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, was stabbed to death just a few days after he finished filming. He was only 18 at the time of his murder. These are the scariest things that happened in each state, part 1. Up first is Oklahoma, and on the morning of April 19th, 1995, an ex-Army soldier named Timothy McVeigh parked a rented Ryder truck in front of a federal building in downtown Oklahoma City. Inside the car was an extremely powerful bomb. McVeigh then got out and ignited the bomb. And at precisely 9:02 a.m., the bomb exploded. Within moments, the surrounding area looked like a war zone. A third of the building had been reduced to rubble, and 300 nearby buildings were either destroyed or damaged. But what's more disturbing is the amount of people that died. 168 people died that day, including 19 children, with several hundred more injured. This was one of the worst acts of homegrown terrorism in the United States history. If the world ends, this is what you will see. This is Ted Turner, who is the founder of CNN, and he has a doomsday video ready to air on live TV in case the world ends. He said, "We won't be signing off until the world ends. We'll be on, and we will cover the end of the world. And that will be our last event. We'll play the national anthem one time on the 1st of June, and when the end of the world comes, we will play Nearer My God to Thee and sign off." Before I show you the video, just imagine you're watching it when the world's ending.